Right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from SalesPOP, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Patrick Engasser, who is over the other side of the country in Destin, Florida. How you doing, Patrick?
I'm great, John. Thanks for having me on. Usually it's sunny here too, but not today.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, we've had a bit of mixed weather ourselves. And Patrick is a unique, sought-after motivational speaker, business coach, and life coach. Started his career in the insurance industry as top sales rep for a Fortune 500 company. Awarded a top account closer in his third year and promoted to district manager. And as a motivational speaker and coach, you share your inspiration on how you succeeded despite being blind and how others can overcome their challenges and have the success they want. And that's what we're going to talk about today is overcoming sales challenges. And you know Patrick, one of the hardest thing in sales, right, is that you're in this unique job where you face no and you face rejection every day. I mean, it's a part of your job. How have you how do you help salespeople kind of overcome that and be able to embrace that and move forward, knowing that they have to face this on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I help people face the most as a sales coach. Whether someone's bringing me a sales leader's bringing me in to coach a team, or I'm coaching someone one-on-one, or I used to do this as a leader in the insurance industry, coaching my own sales team.
Mhm.
Is really it's just this very all too well. It's all about mindset. And you have to understand the business you're in, the career that you're in, and that a big part of it is getting through that, what we call rejection. But in reality, it's not the right time for this person, this prospect. You put them on the follow-up list, you come back to them. Understanding that you've got to go through enough. We've all heard the example of shuffling the deck of cards and then going
Yep.
through it to find the aces. Everybody isn't an ace today. Some of them may become tomorrow if you follow up the right way, but understanding it is a process. We're shucking oysters to find the pearl, whatever metaphor you want to use,
Right.
but everyone isn't going to be a yes, and not taking that personally, because the biggest problem that most people have is they take that personally. They really do believe in their subconscious mind that there's something wrong with their delivery or wrong with them. Now, can we get better at our presentation? Can we get better at our approach? Of course. But you can have the best approach in the world. Every single person isn't going to say yes today.
Yeah.
So you've got to get okay with that no and be comfortable with it and understand it's part of the process. Put them on the follow up list and move on to somebody else.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good insight there, Patrick, because yeah, I do think it's very easy to take things personally. I mean, we're kind of hardwired that way, and it's very
Yep.
easy for a salesperson to take it personally. But as you said, I mean, if you look back on your calls and your meetings, and you say, "Well, I did everything I could, and I did everything the right way, and it was a no because of timing, or it wasn't the right fit, or whatever." There's nothing personal in that if you put your best foot forward.
No, and I've 100%. And I've also had many prospects who were a no at first that something changed for them. Timing changed. The pain point that other businesses were experiencing at that time, they were not, and then something shifted and they were. And I followed up, or
Mhm.
someone referred me back to that person where originally on a cold call it was a no, but then once the two of us got back connected through a referral, now all of a sudden it was a yes, because I knew someone that they knew who I had
Right.
done business with, and they're like, "Oh wow, okay, well now you have more credibility to me." So the biggest thing is don't give up on that no, but also understand that it's not your fault that it's a no today, unless of course your presentations is
Yeah.
horrible. Then maybe we need to work on that. But as you're doing, if look at yourself in the mirror and say, "Hey, I did everything I
Mhm.
could. Maybe I can learn one or two things from this, but I'm not going to take it personally." Because let's be honest, they're not your brother, your sister, your
No.
parent, your friend. They're someone who you haven't met before in most cases, and you're probably not going to meet again until you follow up with them if you do that. So that's
Yeah.
really the biggest thing to remember, is they don't control your life unless you let them.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think one of the other things too, and Patrick, is obviously, given the fact that you're blind, but you've still been very successful. What are some of the things that maybe you've been able to pick up on, or techniques that you've been able to use that perhaps other people who don't have your issue, who are sighted people who maybe overlook because they're too consumed with their performance, maybe?
I think that's a good question. I think a lot of it is for sighted people, it's body language that you're going to pick up. Some of
Hmm.
that I'm going to pick up, but a lot of them I'm not going to be able to. So for me, tone of voice is huge. So it's, we've all heard the saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Right.
You can say the same exact words four different ways and they mean different things based on the tone and the way that they're said. I pick up on a lot of that because I have
Hmm.
to, as a necessity. So I've trained a lot of sales professionals and sales teams how to pick up on tone and and to listen for it, because the first step in change is awareness, or upgrading
Hmm.
anything is awareness, as you know. So for me, it's a lot of times even just making people aware of, okay, tone isn't something tone of voice isn't something you maybe pick up on a lot, or the way someone says something
Yeah.
might not be something you pick up on, but if we're more aware of how they say it, that's going to make a difference. Also, walking in with, you got to use your resources. Walking in with a guide dog.
Hmm.
You know, I've learned that lots and lots and lots of people in the world like dogs. So uh, I'd say it's probably 90-10, 90%, 85 to 90%. It's a positive response when I walk in. So I originally thought, hey, I can't drive. I'm in an outside sales position
Hmm.
when I started out in the insurance industry. This is a huge disadvantage. Then I realized I had an advantage if I would lean into it, which was I was going to walk in with a dog. I was unique. I was different
Hmm.
from everyone else. And in the sales world, we want to paint ourselves into a category of one where we're unique, right? Because
Yeah.
they're getting 10 calls a day or 20 contacts a day or 20 a week, whatever the number is. It's high. And if we're like everybody else and we blend in, it's going to be a very quick no before we have an opportunity to share how we're different. If we can separate ourselves, that's when we have an opportunity to really show them how we can help, show that prospect how we can make a difference. And for me, being different, I saw originally, as
Hmm.
often we do, as a negative. I realized it could be an asset for me, and that's what I decided to turn it into.
Yeah, and I think that's a great piece of advice as well. Is just as you said, just embrace who you are and embrace your situation, and maybe there are things that are different about you that you can use
Mm-hmm.
actually to your advantage as opposed to looking them as a disadvantage. One of the other things, Patrick, you've coached a lot of salespeople over the years, and you built teams and all of that. Is how do you? A lot of salespeople, it's always that bell curve, right? There's a ton of salespeople who are stuck in the middle, right? Who are they're good performers, but they're not like top performers. They're kind of solid, but they can't seem to break through to top performers. How have you helped people get from like that kind of being good but not being great, getting them over that hump?
Well, I think the biggest thing is someone who's willing to invest in themselves. Like my first 2 years in sales, I was horrible, and I didn't know anything in it. I had no experience in it. I had no experience in business, and here I was, a 1099 outside salesperson who was essentially self-employed, working for a brand that most people would know the name, but I also was in sales for the first time. So I didn't know anything. And I was trying to, through trial and error and through my district manager, learn as much as I could. But for me, finding mentorship was a big part of it, right? So finding mentorship within the organization, someone who was already doing what I wanted to do. And then I went out and hired a business coach. I read a book by
Mhm.
Jack Canfield, Success Principles, where he talked about everybody should have a coach. And I'm like, well, I can't disagree with that. Top athletes have them, top musicians have them, Olympians have them. Why don't I have one? I'm I'm not as good as them at what I do, that's for sure. Why don't I get one? So I went out and hired a business and sales coach, and that transformed my career. Within a year, I went from bottom 500s out of about 615 agents, um, in terms of new account sales, to number one in 14 months. So
Mm.
that completely changed my career, because I had someone who could really teach me strategies that would put me in the driver's seat and help me move those yeses or no's to yeses. So to kind of go full circle back to your question, I think a lot of it is just one, it's mindset. It's having
Yeah.
the mindset that I want to be one of the best, and then understanding that there are steps you have to take in order for that to happen. You can't be unwilling to outwork everybody else if you want to be the best. The best
Mhm.
people put in the work, they learn the skill set, they change their mindset and they decide they want, step one is deciding, hey, I want to be one of the best. Then you've got to be willing to do some things to build your skill set, whether that's investing in a coach or finding a mentor in your industry and spending a bunch of time with them, being willing to work some hours early on that other people wouldn't be willing to work, and do some things other people wouldn't be willing to do. And then it's just learning psychology, learning
Yeah.
some sales psychology to say, hey, what moves people to action? What can I do to influence someone in a positive way, not to convince someone to do something that they shouldn't or don't want to do, but to influence someone to take the right steps that actually are
Mhm.
going to benefit you and them, if this is the right thing for them. And that was
Right.
something I got very deep into, was sales psychology and neuroscience and brain-based learning and all that. And that made a big impact on me.
Yeah, and what you've outlined there, Patrick, I think it's very fundamental, as you said, investing in yourself, because I do think an awful lot of people sit around waiting for organizations to invest in them,
100%.
or and as I often say, is if you think about it, because I hired coaches in the past myself for my own career development, and I always say to people is, I bet you have a hobby, right? Whatever your hobby is, maybe you love pickleball or golf or something like that. I guarantee you, you probably pay somebody to help you with your golf swing or whatever. Now, golf's never going to put money on the table or put bread on the table for you. But your job, you invest nothing in. You invest nothing in, as you said, even, and there's so much free stuff today, but you don't invest anything in the thing that puts bread on your table, and yet you'll invest in these other things that never will.
100%. And I love what you said there about, people invest in their hobbies, but then they don't invest in their
Yeah.
career or their business or their job. And it's like, well, the hobby, it's okay if you do the opposite. If you're like, hey, I just come out here, I swing the club, I try to get better, I ask for some free tips from somebody else who golfs who's a friend of mine. Like, that's okay, that's reasonable. But then to sit there and say, hey, I'm not going to do that in my career. And as you pointed out, a lot of people will do the opposite. Like, I'll get lessons. I'll take lessons on, how to play pickleball, but I'm not gonna sit down with a coach or look to hire someone or ask someone to be a mentor of mine, within an organization. I think that the top producers, the thing I find over and over again, is that they're willing to do what other people aren't willing. That they're
Mhm.
willing to go to someone else and say, "Hey, can I take you out to lunch? You're better than me in some area. I want to get better. Would you be willing to share?" I did that so often early on. Would you be willing to share what you're doing to help you get from where you were originally to where you want to go, which is where I want to go. And usually, most of the time, people are willing to do that. It's just most people won't ask. And then if they
Mhm.
do, the crazy part is sometimes you give them good free advice, and 6 months later you come back, you say, how did you do with that? Oh, I never really did it. It's like,
Yeah.
wow. So the top producers, not only they ask, not only they hire a coach, not only they constantly investing in their own improvement, but they take what they learn and they implement it. And if it's something that doesn't work for them, okay, fine, they're on to the next thing. They find something else, they implement that. But they're always trying something new and taking action. As you said, they're not sitting around. They're always doing something to move themselves forward.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important point as well, because maybe there are people sitting there and saying, "Oh, it's all very well. I don't have the disposable income right now to hire coaches or whatever," and you go, "Fine. Personally, I think it'd be a great investment, but." If you're in that situation, what you've just outlined there is exactly, go and find the top producers, take them out for a coffee, get advice off them. This is way, and most importantly, as you said, if you're going to ask people for advice, for God's sakes, follow through on the advice they give you. But there you go. I mean, sitting in your organization are people who are probably love to, and let's face it, Patrick, as you know, salespeople love to talk about their successes. And most people, it's going to be a rare time when you're going to have somebody who's not going to want to give you tips, or is actually going to be, kind of flattered that you asked them.
Yep. 100%. I always thought early on, well, this person's not going to want to talk to me.
Hmm.
Very rarely did I have someone who said no, or even if they said no, it wasn't even no. It was, I'm super busy right now. Could we do this in a month or two? It was never, no, I don't want to talk to you. Everyone's willing to tell you, oh, you think that first of all, you give someone praise and tell them that they do a great job at something. Typically, people want to share.
Yeah.
They're willing to reciprocate and share something because they're like, hey, you're somebody who noticed that I
Hmm.
take this seriously and I do well at it. But back to your point of the investment, coaching shouldn't if you do want to hire a coach, it certainly doesn't need to be me or you, but whoever it is that someone wants to hire, if you're hiring the right coach, obviously the first month you're going to put money out, but long
Mhm.
term it should not be something that's costing you money. If you're implementing, the only reason you shouldn't hire a coach if it's the right coach is if you're not going to implement.
Yeah.
Because if you're willing to implement, it should not be costing you money. You should, in a very short period of time, it should be paying for itself. And then it should be exponential beyond that. That, hey, this is information that I'll tell you right now from my very first coach, you know, 11 or 12 years ago, I'm still using things he taught me. And I haven't worked with him in 9 years. And
Hmm.
I can tell you right now, I still use things that make me money to this day that I'm not paying him for, but
Yeah.
they exponentially have helped me over and over and over again. Same thing's true for mentors. I mean, I've sat down with mentors over dinner, over lunch, and it cost me, I don't know, $50,
Hmm.
$100, depending on if they wanted me to take them for steak or a burger. But but
Yeah.
that $100 or $50 or $10 for coffee is still helping me to this day. So I'm a huge believer in find someone. The only real shortcut to success I've found in anything is find someone who's already where you want to go, and then ask them how they got there, and then take their blueprint and use it to speed up the process so you can get there faster instead of bumping into a bunch of walls on the way there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, you're right about mentors too, because maybe that 50 or $100 lunch, I mean, these are probably people that would cost you like $500 an hour to talk to.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Tell me a little bit about when salespeople get into slumps, because I get asked about this a lot, and I have my own opinions about it. But when salespeople get into slumps and suddenly things aren't going as well as they used to, what advice do you give to them?
Big one, if I'm coaching someone now, or if I'm coaching a sales team and someone on the team asks me this question. um, let's say, like, I had this not that long ago. Executives brought me in, and I'm still working with this team now, but he brought me in to talk to his sales team in person. And then I've been doing Zoom trainings and some phone calls and things. But one of the things that one of his sales professionals took me aside and asked me the exact question you just said, is like, hey, I used to be able to do X. I was closing at this high rate, and now for whatever reason, the last 3-4 months, I feel like any meeting I go into, I'm not getting those same results. Why is that, and what can I do to change it? And one of the biggest things that I always say is, you're probably now at this point starting to second guess the things that you did before. So
Mm,
maybe a lot of times people try to change things when it's not working, and that's always a could be a good strategy, but sometimes there might be 3, 4, 5 things that had a reasonable explanation as to why they went wrong or why they didn't go the way you wanted. And then if you start second guessing and changing things from what worked, then it's in your head, and it can become something that's
mhm,
consistently happening. So I always tell people, like, let's go back to basics. What were you doing before? Try to think back 4 or 5 months ago when whenever it was that things were going well. What were you doing then that maybe you've changed in some way? Because sometimes it's, hey, this was working really well, and then I got lazy and
yeah.
I stopped asking this question that I used to always ask. I had a lady who I was coaching, um, and the question she used to ask the question based on what we talked about: do you see any reasons why you shouldn't make these benefits available to your employees? And it's a great close question in the employee benefits world. And you know, I asked her, I said, we talked about that months ago. I said, are you still doing that? She said, you know what? It's funny you asked. No, I'm not.
Mm,
I'm not consistently doing it. And when I was consistently asking that one question, then I had follow-up questions to that. It led right to the close. So that's one of the things. The second thing I would say is create. I learned this from Ed Milet, from some of the some from him speaking. He talks a lot about anchoring, and I'm a big believer in this. That if you can anchor something to change what your strategy is walking in, like, it sounds silly, but if you do one thing walking into a sales appointment before you walk in, change what you do. So, he talks a lot about if he's training someone psychologically who is a hitter in baseball, that he'll have them change how they hold the bat, or even just tapping the bat on the plate 3 times instead of once. So
mm,
even if it's just before you walk in, go, I got this. Rub your hands together, whatever
right.
it is, snap your
Mhm,
fingers, something that brings you energy. Um, we've all seen Tony Robbins do the thing where he jumps and spins. That's one of his anchors that he does when he walks out. Like whatever it is for you, that's going to be different, but it's going to kind of snap your mind into, okay, now I'm this person who's going to go in and close, and say something to yourself out loud, and then walk in and close the deal. That I think can help. It sounds silly, but sometimes just changing something about the anchoring that next event, especially if you close the
Mhm.
deal, then walk out and anchor yourself, right? Snap your fingers, clap your hands, rub them together, whatever it is, that to bake into your subconscious mind that this is something that I want to, that this is something that we're going to repeat over and over and
Right.
over. But a big part of it is going back and really dissecting what it is that you've done in the past that's worked. It sounds so silly, but it's amazing how people get away from things that were working, and then it becomes this spiral of they get in their head and then they start changing everything, and
Yeah.
then the things that were working they're not doing anymore. So I think that's a big part of it as well, is really going back to the basics when things aren't working.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I always look at as well. Is I think if you're in a slump, is go back and exactly what you said. Look at what you were doing when you were successful, and
Mhm.
I guarantee you, as we get older and more experienced, that's the thing we have to be most mindful of because we get cocky, we're like, yeah, I don't need to do that. I don't need to do that anymore, and that's when it unwinds. And the thing that I often find, Patrick, is you go back, you'll see that they have started to skimp on prep.
100% agree with that. I've noticed this a lot during COVID with coaching people. When COVID happened and people didn't maybe run an in-person appointment for a handful of weeks because everything was locked down, and then they got back out there, and it was like either they were prepping differently, or they were really rusty on their presentation, and it's like you forgot what you were doing before. That's why this all fell apart. It's not that you're not any good. It's just
Mhm.
the stuff that you were doing before you're not doing because you haven't done it in 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And that
Mhm.
that alone, it seems like not a lot of time, but you don't run a presentation or run a meeting or negotiate for a period of time that's unusually long, even if it's I'm used to doing it 3 times a week, and the last 2 weeks I've only done it once. You can get rusty and get out of some of those really good habits that you have. And to your point, I feel that I find that when people are having more success, they get lazy about
Mm.
preparation. They say, "Oh, I know what to do." And sometimes you don't need to prep. You prepped a half hour before, and you only need to prep 5 or 10 minutes now. Okay, I'm going to do
Mhm.
this. I'm going to do this. I'm
Mhm.
going to go over my notes and say, okay, what is the pain point this prospect is dealing with compared to the one that was the meeting before that? So how am I going to change my presentation a little bit? I had an agent who I was training years ago in the insurance industry, and he watched me do 3 presentations on the same day, and he's like, your presentation's pretty much the same, but he's like, man, the third one, the last one of the day, this person gave you some information at the beginning, and he's like, your presentation remained a lot the same, but you totally changed this part and this part. I
Mhm.
said, yeah, because they gave me some information that
Yeah.
led me to believe when I asked, hey, what's the biggest reason you took this meeting? And they told me it was a specific policy that I mentioned when we were on the phone. Well, that's information. I'm now going to take that, and that becomes now 40% of the
Yeah.
presentation instead of 20. So a lot of it is being flexible and understanding the prospect you're in front of. But if you're not prepping at all, it doesn't have to be as long. But if you get lazy with your prep, you might find that you start missing a lot of opportunities, and then you start second guessing things. So just look at,
Yeah.
if that's happening for you, how are you prepping? And, have you gotten lazy with it? You want to make sure you're still preparing the same way, and not getting comfortable. I mean, same thing's true with anything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I've been married for 7 years. You get lazy with date night with your spouse. Before you know it, things start going south real fast. So you got
Uh,
to sit there and say, hey, what did I let go of? Oh, we're not going to dinner every week anymore.
no, it's
So
it's very true. I just passed our 25th wedding anniversary. I mean, you have to keep working. You have to keep working at these things.
never goes away, right? I mean, you
No,
still got
no.
you still got to put the work in.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, listen, Patrick, this has been fantastic. All of Patrick's information will be below this video, including the link to your book. If I can do it, you can do it. Inspiration for eliminating excuses, overcoming challenges, and succeeding in business and life. Uh, a great picture of you, and that's the dog, is it?
That is the dog. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
what's the dog's name?
The dog in the book is Elvis. That's the yellow lab, and then I have a black lab now. So
Oh,
his name's
fantastic.
Indy. Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, thanks again. Before we go, Patrick, please do remind people about what you do.
Yep. So I'm a business, sales, and leadership coach, and I do motivational speaking for organizations, corporations, companies, colleges, and universities. And I would just say if somebody is looking to bring on someone as a coach, they can book and this is specifically for anyone from your podcast, John, but
Yeah.
they can go to talkwithpatrick.com and set up a strategy session with me. When my administrator, Jonna, reaches out, just make sure you let her know that you're from the John Golden podcast so that she waives my introductory fee on that. So it's a free strategy session. You just have to come with a goal. That's all I ask. You have to know where you want to go or have an idea of that. Talkwithpatrick.com. And I'd love to work with you. Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for watching and listening. And I will see you all again very soon. Thank you.